Abandoned German Shepherd encounters dangerous wolves. The ending will leave you speechless. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The bitter January wind howled through the dense forest, slicing through the fur of the small German Shepherd puppy, huddled against the base of a massive oak tree. Luna, barely 12 weeks old, shivered uncontrollably as snowflakes melted against her black and tan coat. Her once bright amber eyes were now dull with hunger and fear, her small body significantly thinner than it should have been. Just 6 hours earlier, Luna had been warm and safe in the back of a pickup truck, nestled in a worn blanket as her owner drove along the rural mountain roads. She didn't understand when the truck stopped, or why the man who had fed her since birth suddenly lifted her from the truck bed. Luna had wagged her tail, expecting the usual rough affection. Instead, he had set her down on the forest floor, climbed back into his vehicle, and driven away despite her desperate barks and attempts to follow. The forest, which had seemed merely curious when her owner was present, now loomed threatening and vast. Luna had followed the road for miles, her small paws becoming raw and painful against the cold, rough asphalt. Eventually, exhaustion forced her to seek shelter among the trees as darkness fell. The temperature had dropped quickly after sunset. Luna's instincts urged her to find warmth and protection. She had discovered a shallow depression beneath the sprawling roots of an ancient oak, offering minimal shelter from the wind. There she curled into a tight ball, trying to preserve what little body heat remained. As midnight approached, Luna's ears perked up at a distant, haunting sound. A howl echoed through the forest, followed by another, then several more joining in a chilling chorus. Even in her inexperience, Luna recognized the sound on a primal level. Wolves. Her small body tensed, and a whimper escaped her throat. Luna had never encountered wolves, but something deep in her genetic memory recognized them as both kin and potential threat. The wolf pack was still distant, but in the stillness of the winter night, their howls carried far. Luna pressed herself deeper into her inadequate shelter, making herself as small and invisible as possible. Sleep came in fitful bursts, disturbed by hunger pangs and the persistent cold that seemed to reach through her fur to the skin beneath. Each time she drifted off, the distant howling would startle her awake, seemingly closer than before. By dawn, Luna was exhausted, hungry, and desperately thirsty. The morning light revealed a forest transformed by several inches of fresh snow. Under different circumstances, Luna might have delighted in this new experience, bounding through the powder, snapping at snowflakes, discovering the joy of winter play that was the birthright of her breed. Instead, she cautiously emerged from her shelter, her movements stiff from cold and inactivity. Luna needed water, and her sharp senses detected the sound of a stream nearby. She limped toward it, each step painful on her tender paws. The stream was partially frozen, but water still flowed in the center. Luna broke through the thin ice at the edge with her paw, then lapped desperately at the frigid water. The cold liquid momentarily eased her thirst, but did nothing for her hunger. Luna hadn't eaten since the previous morning when her owner had tossed her a few scraps before their fateful journey. She sniffed the air, seeking anything that might be edible, but the winter forest offered little to an inexperienced puppy. Luna was attempting to dig beneath the snow, instinctively searching for hidden food, when a twig snapped sharply in the distance. She froze, ears pivoting toward the sound. Through the trees, approximately 50 yards away, Luna caught sight of movement, a large, gray-furred animal with alert ears and an imposing presence. A wolf, and where there was one, there would be others. Luna's heart pounded in her chest as she slowly backed toward her shelter under the oak tree. The wolf hadn't seen her yet, but it was only a matter of time. The wind was blowing toward Luna, carrying her scent away from the predator, but any shift in the breeze would immediately reveal her presence. As if sensing her thoughts, the wind changed direction. Luna saw the wolf's head lift, nose working the air. Then, with deliberate focus, the wolf turned toward her location. Their eyes met across the distance, predator and potential prey, and Luna knew she had been discovered. The wolf was a magnificent creature, with thick winter fur and powerful muscles visible even at this distance. It was at least 5 times Luna's size, an adult female in her prime. She stared at Luna with unnerving intensity, neither advancing nor retreating. Luna's instincts screamed contradictory commands: run, hide, submit, fight. She was too inexperienced to know which would save her, too young to have learned the complex social etiquette that might govern such an encounter. In her confusion, she remained frozen in place, a small tan and black figure trembling against the white snow. The standoff continued for several heartbeats before the wolf took a deliberate step forward, then another. She was approaching slowly, cautiously, her body language neither overtly aggressive nor friendly. Luna whimpered softly, unsure whether to flee or stand her ground. Before either could decide their next move, more shapes emerged from the trees behind the first wolf. 2, then 3, then 5 more wolves materialized like gray ghosts, moving with fluid grace through the snowy forest. The pack had arrived. Luna's chances of survival, already slim, now seemed to evaporate entirely. A lone wolf might have ignored her or even shown curiosity rather than predatory intent. A pack was different. They hunted together, thought together, decided together whether something was prey. The lead wolf, the female who had first spotted Luna, made a soft sound in her throat. The others responded by spreading out in a loose semicircle, effectively cutting off Luna's escape routes. They moved with the practiced precision of hunters who had worked together for many seasons. Luna backed against the oak tree, her small body shaking uncontrollably. She was too terrified to run and too inexperienced to know any other response. The lead wolf continued her approach, now just 30 yards away, her amber eyes, so similar to Luna's own, fixed unwaveringly on the puppy. In that moment, as death seemed certain, Luna did the only thing her instincts allowed. She rolled onto her back, exposing her vulnerable belly and throat in the universal canine gesture of complete submission. Her eyes closed, small body trembling as she awaited whatever would come. The forest fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Luna felt, rather than heard, the approach of the lead wolf. The subtle vibration of large paws on snow, the presence of a much larger body near her own. She kept her eyes tightly shut, still presenting her ultimate submission. Then she felt it. Warm breath against her exposed belly, the unmistakable sensation of being sniffed, examined. Luna remained perfectly still as the wolf's inspection continued. She could sense the other pack members watching, waiting for their leader's decision. After what seemed an eternity, Luna felt something entirely unexpected, a gentle nudge against her side from a cold nose, followed by a soft whine that contained no aggression. Cautiously, Luna opened her eyes. The lead wolf stood over her, massive and powerful, but her posture had changed. There was no predatory tension in her body now, no imminent threat in her gaze. Instead, the wolf regarded Luna with what almost appeared to be recognition, or perhaps something more complex, a kind of understanding. Behind the lead wolf, the rest of the pack had relaxed their stance, some sitting in the snow, others watching with mere curiosity rather than hunting intensity. The atmosphere had transformed from deadly peril to something Luna couldn't comprehend, but instinctively recognized as non-threatening. The lead wolf made that soft sound in her throat again, and to Luna's astonishment, leaned down to lick her face once, a gesture that, among canines, could signify acceptance. Then the wolf stepped back, creating space between them, and waited. Luna remained on her back for several more seconds, uncertain. Then, with tremendous caution, she rolled over and rose to her feet, still keeping her body low, and her tail tucked in continued submission. The wolf watched this, then turned and took several steps toward the rest of the pack before looking back at Luna. The message was unmistakable, even to a puppy. The wolf was asking Luna to follow. Standing at this crossroads of fate, hungry, cold, and abandoned by humans, Luna faced a choice that would determine whether she lived or died through the brutal winter ahead. The wolf waited, patience in her ancient eyes, neither commanding nor pleading, simply offering. Luna took one small, hesitant step forward, then another, and another. Luna's first steps toward the wolf pack were the most difficult she had ever taken. Every instinct honed through generations of domestication warned her against following wild predators. Yet something deeper, more primal, recognized a potential for safety that the winter forest, alone, could not provide. The lead wolf, whom Luna would come to know as Silverfrost for the distinctive silver-tipped fur on her back, waited patiently as the puppy approached. The rest of the pack watched with varying degrees of interest and wariness. A large male with a scar across his muzzle growled softly, but a quick glance from Silverfrost silenced him immediately. When Luna reached Silverfrost, the wolf gently touched her nose to the top of the puppy's head, an acknowledgement that, while not fully understanding, Luna recognized as acceptance. Then Silverfrost turned and began moving through the forest at a measured pace, slow enough for Luna's small legs to follow. The pack fell into formation around them, two wolves taking flanking positions while the others brought up the rear. They moved with practiced efficiency, conserving energy as they navigated the snow-covered terrain. Luna struggled to keep pace, her paws still tender and her small body weakened by hunger and cold. Several times she stumbled, only to feel Silverfrost slow down, waiting for her to regain her footing. After nearly an hour of travel, during which they covered several miles of forest, the pack arrived at what was clearly their territory. Luna sensed the change before seeing any physical markers. The wolves' body language shifted, becoming more relaxed and confident as they crossed some invisible boundary known only to them. Soon they reached a rocky hillside where a narrow opening was partially concealed by evergreen shrubs. Silverfrost led the way inside, and Luna hesitantly followed. The entrance opened into a surprisingly spacious cave with multiple chambers. The temperature inside was noticeably warmer than the winter forest, and the ground was lined with dried leaves and grasses that created a natural bedding. 3 wolf pups, significantly larger than Luna but still clearly juveniles, bounded forward when the pack entered. They stopped short at the sight of Luna, their playfulness instantly replaced by suspicious curiosity. One of them, bolder than the others, approached to sniff at the strange newcomer. Luna cowered slightly, uncertain how to respond to these half-grown wolves. They were already nearly twice her size, despite being perhaps only 6 months old. Silverfrost made a soft, chuffing sound, and the juvenile wolves backed away, giving Luna space. Then, to Luna's astonishment, Silverfrost gently picked her up by the scruff of her neck, as a mother wolf would carry her own pup, and carried her deeper into the cave. In a small alcove, somewhat separate from the main chamber, Silverfrost set Luna down. The area contained softer bedding and was noticeably warmer than the rest of the cave. With gentle nudges, Silverfrost encouraged Luna to lie down in this nest-like space. Too exhausted to resist, Luna complied, her small body practically collapsing onto the soft bedding. What happened next would forever change the course of Luna's life. Silverfrost lay down beside her, curling her large body around the shivering puppy. The wolf's thick fur and natural body heat created an island of warmth that Luna instinctively pressed into. For the first time since being abandoned, Luna felt safe. The combination of physical warmth and the rhythmic sound of Silverfrost's heartbeat lulled the exhausted puppy into a deep, healing sleep. Luna awoke hours later to the sound of activity in the main chamber of the cave. The wolf pack had returned from hunting, bringing with them the fruits of their success. Silverfrost was no longer beside her, but the nest remained warm from her body heat. Cautiously, Luna rose and peered around the edge of the alcove. The pack was gathered around a fresh kill, a deer they had brought down together. They fed in a hierarchical order that Luna didn't yet understand but would come to learn intimately in the months ahead. Silverfrost, as the alpha female, fed near the front with the alpha male, the large, battle-scarred wolf Luna had seen earlier. Luna's stomach cramped painfully at the sight and smell of food. She whimpered softly, unintentionally drawing attention to herself. Several wolves looked up, including the scarred alpha male who growled low in his throat, but Silverfrost immediately left the kill, tearing away a small portion of meat as she did so. To the evident surprise of the pack, Silverfrost brought this morsel to Luna, dropping it before the hungry puppy. Luna hesitated only briefly before hunger overcame caution. She had never eaten raw meat before, but instinct guided her. The taste was strange, yet somehow familiar to her untamed self, and the nourishment it provided was desperately needed. As Luna ate, she became aware of the pack watching this unprecedented behavior from their alpha female. The scarred male, Storm, as Luna would later know him, seemed particularly displeased, but he made no move to intervene. The hierarchy of the pack was clear, and Silverfrost's decisions were not to be challenged lightly. The juvenile wolves watched with undisguised curiosity and what might have been jealousy. Later, Luna would understand that they were Silverfrost's offspring from the previous spring, now old enough to join hunts, but still learning their place in the pack structure. Their initial wariness of Luna would eventually transform into grudging acceptance, though never the kind of maternal bond that Silverfrost inexplicably formed with the abandoned puppy. That first meal marked the beginning of Luna's integration into the wolf pack. It wasn't immediate or without challenges, but it was the crucial first step. Each day that followed established new patterns and taught Luna vital lessons about survival in the wild. Silverfrost became Luna's protector and teacher. She seemed to recognize that the puppy was both kin and not kin, a creature of her own kind, but shaped by human influence. Perhaps she sensed the vulnerability and abandonment that made Luna different from her own strong offspring. Whatever the reason, the alpha female had claimed Luna as her responsibility, and the pack respected that choice, even if they didn't understand it. Luna learned quickly. Her domesticated beginnings had not erased the instinctual knowledge buried in her DNA. She watched how the wolves moved through the forest, how they communicated with subtle ear movements and tail positions, how they preserved energy when food was scarce and celebrated with play when it was plentiful. The winter deepened, bringing storms that howled around their cave and days so cold that the pack remained in their den, sharing warmth and conserving energy. Luna grew stronger, her body developing the lean muscle and endurance that came from wild living. Her coat thickened in response to the cold, becoming more like her wolf companions, though still distinctively marked with the black and tan pattern of her German Shepherd heritage. By mid-February, Luna had grown significantly, though she remained smaller than the juvenile wolves. She had earned a place in the pack hierarchy, not high, certainly, but no longer an outsider to be merely tolerated. She contributed in the ways she could, using her keen senses to alert the pack to unusual sounds or scents, learning to move silently through the forest during hunts, though she was still too small to participate in bringing down large prey. Luna's most remarkable adaptation was her ability to bridge two worlds. She retained qualities from her domesticated beginnings, a capacity for play that extended beyond practical learning, a readiness to form bonds with individual pack members rather than merely accepting the hierarchy, and a vocal range that included barks rarely used by her wolf companions. Yet she had also embraced the ways of the wild, the patience of the hunt, the language of subtle body movements, the rhythm of life dictated by weather and prey patterns rather than human schedules. The day that truly marked Luna's acceptance came during a particularly successful hunt. The pack had brought down an elk, a feast that would sustain them for days. Luna had followed at a distance, as she had been taught to do. When the kill was complete, she waited for her turn, expecting as always to receive her portion after the adult wolves had fed. To her surprise, Silverfrost made a soft sound that Luna had come to recognize as a call specifically for her. When Luna approached cautiously, Silverfrost stepped aside, creating space at the kill. The message was clear. Luna was being invited to feed with the pack proper, not as an afterthought, but as a member. Storm, the alpha male, watched this development with amber eyes that revealed nothing of his thoughts. He had never shown Luna the same acceptance that Silverfrost had, maintaining a wary distance. Now, as Luna hesitantly took her place at the kill, she felt his gaze heavy upon her. She kept her body language deferential, eyes lowered, ears slightly back, taking only small portions. After several tense moments, Storm returned his attention to his own feeding. It wasn't explicit approval, but it was acceptance of Silverfrost's decision. For Luna, it represented a milestone in her remarkable journey from abandoned domestic puppy to member of a wild wolf pack. As winter began its slow surrender to spring, Luna's place within the pack solidified. Now, nearly 5 months old, she had grown considerably, though she remained smaller than the wolves. Her body had become lean and muscular from forest living, her movements acquiring the fluid efficiency of her wild companions. The softness of puppyhood had given way to the hardened physique of a survivor. Luna's bond with Silverfrost deepened with each passing day. The alpha female had become more than a protector. She was mentor, companion, and the closest thing to family Luna had known since her abandonment. They often traveled side by side during the pack's daily movements, communicating through an intricate language of subtle gestures and vocalizations that transcended the boundaries between wolf and dog. Storm, the alpha male, maintained his distance, but had gradually stopped viewing Luna as a potential threat or burden. On rare occasions, Luna would catch him watching her with an inscrutable expression that seemed to contain equal parts wariness and reluctant respect. He had witnessed her swift adaptation, her willingness to learn, and most importantly, her absolute loyalty to Silverfrost, and by extension, to the pack itself. The juvenile wolves, Ash, River, and Flint, had evolved from suspicious observers to reluctant playmates. Though they towered over Luna physically, they seemed to appreciate her quickness and surprising tenacity. Impromptu games of chase through the underbrush or mock battles in the clearing near the den became more frequent as the days lengthened and temperatures rose. One crisp March morning, as dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, Silverfrost led Luna to a high ridge overlooking the valley that comprised the heart of their territory. The snow had largely melted except in deeply shaded areas, and the first tentative green shoots were emerging from the forest floor. Sitting side by side on the rocky outcropping, they surveyed the awakening landscape below. Luna had learned to interpret these quiet moments with Silverfrost as teaching opportunities. The alpha female rarely initiated them without purpose. Today, Silverfrost seemed particularly intent, her gaze methodically scanning the valley before settling on something in the distance. Following Silverfrost's line of sight, Luna spotted what had captured the wolf's attention, a thin column of smoke rising above the trees several miles away, marking a human campsite. Luna felt an unexpected surge of conflicting emotions. Her early weeks with humans had left impressions that time had not completely erased. The scent of wood smoke carried on the breeze triggered memories of warmth and food, but also of betrayal and abandonment. Silverfrost turned to Luna, her amber eyes holding the puppy's gaze with unusual intensity. Then, deliberately, she looked back toward the smoke before rising and leading the way down from the ridge in the opposite direction. The message was clear. Humans were to be avoided, their presence noted but not approached. Luna followed without hesitation, though something within her stirred at this first reminder of the world she had come from. She had been fully immersed in learning the ways of the pack, in surviving winter's harsh challenges. The distant smoke served as a jarring reminder that another world existed beyond the boundaries of their territory. As they returned to the den, Luna noticed unusual activity. The pack was preparing to move, something they did periodically when prey patterns shifted or when threats emerged too close to their current location. Storm was already organizing the juvenile wolves, who moved with purpose rather than their usual playful chaos. Within an hour, the pack had abandoned the cave that had sheltered them through the winter. They traveled northwest, deeper into the wilderness, away from the human encampment. Luna kept pace easily now, her endurance having grown tremendously. She no longer required the special accommodations Silverfrost had made during her early days with the pack. They traveled throughout the day, covering nearly 15 miles before finding suitable shelter in a dense thicket near a small stream. The new location lacked the protection of their cave, but offered excellent visibility in all directions and multiple escape routes, priorities that Luna had learned were essential to wolf survival. That night, as the pack settled into their temporary arrangement, Luna sensed a tension that hadn't been present before. The wolves were more alert, the watch rotations more frequent. Even in sleep, Silverfrost's ears remained partially erect, ready to detect any unusual sound. The reason for their heightened vigilance became clear the following dawn, when Luna woke to the distant but unmistakable sound of human voices echoing through the forest, accompanied by a scent that sent a chill through her body. Gunpowder. Hunters had entered the territory. Storm immediately took charge, silently directing the pack into a defensive formation that Luna had seen them practice but never implement. Silverfrost nudged Luna into position between her and one of the older wolves, Oak, whose quiet strength and reliability had earned him the role of third in the hierarchy. For hours, they remained nearly motionless, using the natural camouflage of their fur against the dappled forest floor. Luna's domesticated heritage made absolute stillness more challenging, but months of wild living had taught her the discipline required. She controlled her breathing, silenced the instinctive whine that threatened to escape her throat, and kept her body as motionless as the surrounding undergrowth. The hunting party passed within 200 yards of their position, 5 men with rifles and a pair of hunting dogs straining at their leashes. The dogs, clearly sensing the nearby wolves, became increasingly agitated, pulling hard against their restraints and barking with growing intensity. Luna felt the pack tense around her, muscles coiling in preparation for flight or, if necessary, confrontation. The hunters paused, conferring briefly before changing direction, following their dog's obvious interest. They were now moving directly toward the hidden wolf pack. Storm made a nearly imperceptible sound, a signal that Luna had learned meant prepare to move. The entire pack shifted slightly, ready to flee at his command, but the hunting dogs were leading their masters closer with each passing moment, and soon flight would mean exposure. In that crucial moment, Silverfrost made a decision that demonstrated both her tactical intelligence and her devotion to the pack's safety. Giving Luna a brief, intense look that somehow communicated both reassurance and command, she slipped away from the group, moving with incredible stealth through the underbrush. Several tense minutes passed before Luna heard it, a loud, deliberate howl approximately half a mile east of their position. It was Silverfrost, drawing the attention of the hunting party away from the vulnerable pack. The strategy worked immediately. The dogs redirected their frantic energy toward this new, more definite sign of wildlife. The hunters, eager for their trophy, followed quickly, their voices betraying their excitement at the prospect of a wolf kill. Once the danger had passed, Storm led the pack swiftly in the opposite direction, traveling with the urgent pace that Luna recognized as their emergency speed. She kept up admirably, her heart pounding with both exertion and concern for Silverfrost. They continued for several miles before Storm finally allowed them to rest in a secluded ravine. The pack was quiet, an unusual stillness falling over them in Silverfrost's absence. Even the normally restless juvenile wolves seemed subdued, understanding the gravity of their situation. Luna paced anxiously at the edge of the group, her eyes constantly scanning the forest for any sign of the alpha female's return. Oak, the older wolf who had been positioned beside her during the hunter's approach, moved to sit near her, not touching, but close enough to offer silent companionship. It was the first time any pack member other than Silverfrost had made such a gesture toward Luna, and despite her worry, she felt a surge of gratitude for this small acknowledgement. As twilight descended over the forest, turning the world to shadows and silhouettes, the pack remained in their defensive formation. Luna's anxiety grew with each passing hour. She had never been separated from Silverfrost for so long since joining the pack. The possibility that her protector might not return was too terrible to contemplate. Just as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, a familiar scent carried on the evening breeze. Luna was on her feet instantly, every sense alert. Moments later, Silverfrost emerged from the shadows, moving with the careful deliberation of one conserving strength. Luna rushed forward instinctively at the sight of Silverfrost, only to halt abruptly when Storm issued a low warning growl. Pack protocol demanded restraint, even in moments of emotional reunion. Luna forced herself to remain in place, though every muscle in her body quivered with the effort. Silverfrost approached Storm first, as hierarchy required. The alpha male inspected her thoroughly, confirming she was uninjured before touching his nose briefly to her muzzle, an acknowledgement of her successful return and the risk she had taken for the pack. Only then did she move through the group, briefly connecting with each member in descending order of rank. When she finally reached Luna, the emotional dam broke. Silverfrost pressed her body against the younger dog's, a prolonged contact that conveyed everything words could not. Luna buried her face in the wolf's thick fur, inhaling the familiar scent that had come to mean safety and belonging. The rest of the pack observed this display with varying degrees of tolerance, but none interfered. Even Storm seemed to recognize the special bond that had formed between the alpha female and the once-abandoned puppy. That night, the pack remained in the ravine, though Storm established a vigilant watch rotation. Luna slept pressed against Silverfrost, occasionally startling awake from dreams filled with human voices and the scent of gunpowder. Each time, the solid presence of the alpha female beside her provided immediate reassurance. Dawn brought a council of sorts. The adult wolves gathered in a loose circle, communicating through a complex array of subtle postures, ear positions, and occasional soft vocalizations. Luna, still learning to fully interpret these nuanced exchanges, understood enough to recognize that they were discussing a significant change in plans. The hunters' incursion had disrupted more than just their immediate safety. It had altered the entire season's strategy. Storm's decision, ultimately accepted by the pack, was to move further into the mountain range than they had ever traveled before. Their usual spring territory, while rich in game, was now compromised by human presence. With the juvenile wolves nearly grown and a long, warm season ahead, they would venture into the higher elevations where human encounters would be less likely. The journey began that morning. Luna quickly discovered that travel in the pack's emergency mode was dramatically different from their usual methodical movements. They moved almost continuously, pausing only briefly for water or when scouts reported potential danger. They avoided open areas, preferring to remain within the cover of forest whenever possible. By sunset, they had covered nearly 20 miles, climbing steadily into higher elevations where the vegetation was sparser but the vantage points more numerous. Storm selected a defensible position on a rocky slope for the night's rest, sending Oak and one of the other adult wolves, Willow, to patrol the perimeter. The following days established a pattern. The pack would travel from dawn until midday, hunt if opportunity presented itself, then continue until dusk. They were moving into territory unknown to most of them, though Storm's confident leadership suggested he had some familiarity with these mountains. For Luna, the journey was challenging but invigorating. Her body had grown strong during the winter months and she kept pace without difficulty. More importantly, she was now fully integrated into the pack's operational structure. She took her turn at scouting, using her keen senses to detect potential threats or prey opportunities. Her smaller size allowed her to investigate areas that the larger wolves found challenging to access, and her German Shepherd heritage gave her a level of stamina that sometimes surpassed even her wolf companions. 5 days into their journey, they encountered their first major obstacle, a swift-running river swollen with spring meltwater. The pack followed its course for several miles, seeking a crossing point, but the water remained too deep and fast for safe passage. As daylight began to fade, Storm led them to a sheltered area near the riverbank. The pack was restless, aware that they were vulnerable with the river at their backs. Silverfrost and Storm conferred quietly, then both turned their attention to Luna. Silverfrost approached, making a soft sound that Luna had come to recognize as a call for her specific attention. Then, with deliberate movements, the alpha female led Luna to the river's edge. There, she used her nose to indicate something partially submerged near the bank, a fallen tree that extended nearly 2/3 of the way across the rushing water. Luna studied the makeshift bridge, understanding immediately what Silverfrost was suggesting. The log was too narrow and unstable for the heavier wolves, but Luna, with her smaller frame and excellent balance, might manage it. On the opposite bank, perhaps 100 feet downstream from where the log ended, a sandbar created a potential crossing point where the water appeared shallower. After carefully assessing the situation, Luna looked to Silverfrost. The wolf's steady gaze conveyed both confidence in Luna's abilities and the importance of the task. If Luna could cross and confirm a safe passage point downstream, the pack could avoid a lengthy detour. Without hesitation, Luna stepped onto the fallen tree. Her paws found secure purchase on the rough bark as she moved carefully forward, maintaining her balance despite the water rushing beneath. When she reached the end of the log, she paused, calculating the distance to the nearest rock that might serve as an intermediate step. The leap required was substantial but not impossible. Luna gathered herself, focusing entirely on her target, then sprang forward. Her front paws landed securely on the rock, but her back legs momentarily slipped on the wet surface. For a heart-stopping second, she struggled to find purchase, aware of the dangerous current ready to sweep her away. From the shore, Silverfrost made a sharp sound, not quite a bark, not quite a howl, that somehow conveyed both concern and encouragement. Drawing on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed, Luna pulled herself fully onto the rock. After a brief rest, she made 2 more calculated jumps to smaller rocks, then a final leap to the opposite shore. Once safely on the far bank, Luna shook the water from her fur and looked back across the river. The entire pack stood watching, Storm and Silverfrost at the forefront. With deliberate movements, Luna began moving downstream toward the sandbar she had spotted earlier. The water there was indeed shallower, though still swift. She tested it carefully, wading in several feet before returning to shore. Using the body language she had learned from months with the pack, Luna communicated her findings. The crossing would be challenging but passable. Storm observed her signals, then made a decision. He led the pack downstream to the point Luna had indicated, with Silverfrost taking position directly across from her on the opposite bank. The crossing was tense but successful. The stronger adult wolves went first, forming a partial barrier against the current that helped the younger members follow. Within 15 minutes, the entire pack had reached the far shore, with only minor difficulties managed through immediate mutual support. Once reunited, an extraordinary thing happened. Storm approached Luna directly, something he had rarely done before. The alpha male briefly touched his nose to the top of her head, in what was unmistakably a gesture of approval and acknowledgement. The significance wasn't lost on the rest of the pack. Luna had proven her value not merely as Silverfrost's unusual adoptee, but as a contributing member with unique skills. That night, as they sheltered in a small grove several miles beyond the river, Luna's position in their resting formation shifted slightly. Instead of taking her usual place at the outer edges of the group, she found herself welcomed closer to the center, where greater warmth and protection were afforded. It was a subtle change, but a meaningful one. The pack continued their journey into the higher elevations for another week, encountering and overcoming various challenges. A late spring snowstorm forced them to shelter for 2 days in a shallow cave. Territorial markings from another wolf pack required careful navigation around potentially contested areas. Food became scarcer as they climbed, necessitating more strategic and cooperative hunting techniques. By late April, the pack had established a new territory in the high mountain basin. The area offered several advantages: a crystal-clear lake teeming with fish, meadows where spring growth attracted deer and elk, and numerous rocky outcroppings that provided excellent vantage points for spotting both prey and potential threats. Most importantly, there were no signs of human activity. Storm selected their primary den site beneath a massive granite overhang. The natural shelter was enhanced by centuries of wind-blown soil that had created a soft floor, and the surrounding juniper provided additional concealment. Within days, the pack had adapted the space to their needs, creating worn paths to nearby hunting grounds and water sources. Luna, now 6 months old, continued her remarkable integration into wolf society. Her body had developed the lean, powerful build characteristic of wolves, though her coat retained the distinctive German Shepherd markings that set her apart visually. More significant than her physical development was her mental adaptation. She thought like a wolf now, perceiving the world through the complex social and environmental awareness that governed pack life. The late spring season brought new learning opportunities. Silverfrost began teaching Luna more advanced hunting techniques. While Luna had participated in hunts before, she had primarily served as a herder or scout due to her smaller size. Now, the alpha female was showing her how to take a more direct role, particularly with smaller prey that Luna could handle independently. These training sessions became a daily ritual. Silverfrost would demonstrate a technique: the silent stalk, the precise moment to accelerate, the most effective bite placement, and Luna would practice until she mastered it. Her success rate improved steadily, earning reluctant nods of approval from Storm and increasing respect from the other pack members. One warm afternoon, as Luna and Silverfrost returned from a particularly successful hunt with a plump marmot Luna had caught entirely on her own, they encountered an unusual scene. The pack was gathered around Storm, who appeared to be examining something on the ground with intense interest. As they approached, Luna detected an unfamiliar scent, not danger exactly, but definitely not part of their normal environment. At the center of the wolves' attention was a small metal object, partially buried in the soil, a trap. It had been triggered, likely by a passing small animal, and now lay harmlessly exposed. But its presence carried ominous implications. Humans had ventured into their mountain sanctuary. Storm was methodically investigating the area, searching for additional threats. The rest of the pack fanned out in a precise pattern, noses to the ground, communicating any findings through subtle vocalizations. Luna joined the search, her domesticated heritage providing an unexpected advantage. She recognized not just the trap but the human scent profiles associated with it. This wasn't the same group of hunters they had encountered in the lower forest. These humans smelled differently, less of gun oil and tobacco, more of unfamiliar chemicals and processed foods. Over the next hour, the pack located 3 more traps, all carefully concealed along game trails. Storm led them in a wider perimeter search, eventually discovering a small campsite approximately 2 miles from their den. It had been recently abandoned but showed signs of intended return: a secured tent, covered supplies, equipment carefully protected from weather and animals. The discovery triggered another pack council. Luna watched and listened as the adult wolves communicated through their sophisticated system of body language and subtle sounds. The decision was not immediate. Storm seemed to favor immediate relocation, while Silverfrost and Oak appeared to suggest a more measured approach. Eventually, they reached consensus. Rather than abandoning the territory they had worked so hard to establish, they would shift their activities to the eastern portion of the basin farthest from the human encampment. They would maintain heightened awareness and regular scouting of the human activity, adapting their strategy as needed. That night, as the pack rested in their den, Luna sensed a subtle change in the atmosphere. There was tension, certainly, but also a new level of cohesion. Threat had a way of strengthening pack bonds, reminding each member of their dependence on the collective. Even the juvenile wolves, now nearly adult in size and behavior, displayed less of their typical restlessness and more focused attention to their surroundings. The following dawn brought unexpected developments. As the pack emerged from their den, Ash, one of Silverfrost's offspring, now nearly a year old, returned from his night watch with urgent news. The young wolf's body language communicated both excitement and concern as he reported to Storm. The entire pack followed Storm to a ridge overlooking the western meadow. There, carefully hidden among the trees, they observed what had caused Ash's agitation. A new wolf pack had entered their territory, a smaller group consisting of an adult male, 2 females, and 2 juveniles. They were currently feeding on an elk carcass in the meadow below, seemingly unaware of being watched. Luna felt the immediate tension ripple through her pack. Territory was everything to wolves, and intrusion was not taken lightly. Storm's body language shifted to battle readiness, hackles raised, tail high, ears forward. The other adult wolves matched his posture, preparing for potential conflict. What happened next taught Luna an important lesson about wolf diplomacy. Rather than immediately attacking, Storm initiated a more measured approach. He moved to an exposed position on the ridge and released a powerful howl that echoed across the basin, a clear announcement of territorial claim. The rest of the pack remained hidden but ready. The reaction below was immediate. The intruding pack's alpha male abandoned the kill and took a defensive position, while his pack quickly gathered behind him. He responded with his own howl, not a challenge, Luna realized, but a communication that carried a different message than she expected. Silverfrost nudged Luna gently, directing her attention to specific details of the interaction. The visiting pack's posture wasn't aggressive. There was a supplication in their body language, particularly from the alpha male, who kept his tail and head at mid-level rather than raised in challenge. Storm seemed to recognize this as well. After a brief hesitation, he descended from the ridge in a controlled, deliberate manner. The rest of the pack followed at his signal, maintaining a tight formation that communicated both strength and unity. Luna took her position near Silverfrost, understanding the importance of presenting a cohesive front. The 2 alphas met in the meadow, approximately 20 yards separating them. What followed was one of the most nuanced communications Luna had witnessed among wolves. Through a series of approaches, retreats, postural shifts, and vocalizations, the 2 males engaged in a complex negotiation. The visiting alpha repeatedly displayed non-threatening behavior, while Storm maintained his territorial claim while gradually decreasing his aggressive stance. After several tense minutes, Storm made a decision that surprised Luna. He stepped aside from the elk carcass, allowing the visiting pack to return to their meal. However, he established a clear boundary, pacing a line beyond which his pack remained arrayed in display of their superior numbers and strength. That evening, as both packs settled on opposite sides of the meadow, Luna questioned Silverfrost about what she had witnessed. Through their wordless communication that had grown so sophisticated, the alpha female explained an important aspect of wolf society. Not all encounters between packs resulted in conflict. Sometimes temporary accommodations were made, particularly when the intruding group showed proper deference and when circumstances suggested mutual benefit might outweigh the cost of battle. Luna soon understood those circumstances. The following day, as the visiting pack prepared to move on, their alpha male approached Storm with a particular body posture that Luna had never seen before. What followed was a brief but intense interaction between the two alphas, after which Storm gathered his pack with unusual urgency. The urgency in Storm's movements was unmistakable. After his exchange with the visiting alpha, he led his pack in a rapid deployment, positioning them strategically around the perimeter of their territory. Luna found herself paired with Oak, the experienced wolf who had gradually become something of a mentor to her. They took position on the eastern ridge, overlooking the valley that led toward the human encampment. From this vantage point, Luna soon understood the reason for their heightened alert. In the distance, a procession of humans was making its way up the valley. Not just the small group of trappers they had detected earlier, but a much larger expedition. Through the clear mountain air, Luna counted at least a dozen figures, accompanied by horses laden with equipment. Oak's tense posture told Luna everything she needed to know about the severity of this development. A few isolated trappers could be avoided. This many humans, with their far-reaching weapons and tools, presented an existential threat to the pack's tenuous mountain refuge. As they maintained their observation post, Luna gradually pieced together the connection between the visiting wolf pack and this human incursion. The smaller pack had been fleeing precisely this threat. Forced out of their own territory by the advancing human expedition, they had temporarily entered Storm's domain not as challengers but as refugees bearing crucial warning. By sunset, the full scope of the situation had become clear. The humans were establishing a semi-permanent camp at the valley entrance, effectively blocking the main route the wolves had used to reach this high basin. Scouting reports from other pack members indicated increased human activity throughout the lower elevations as well. The mountain sanctuary was rapidly becoming a potential trap. When the pack regrouped at their den that night, the mood was somber. Even the younger wolves seemed to grasp the gravity of their situation. Storm and Silverfrost conferred at length, occasionally including Oak and Willow in their deliberations. Luna remained slightly apart, as her rank dictated, but observed everything with keen attention. The decision, when it came, was communicated with crystal clarity through Storm's body language and vocalizations. They would not flee immediately, as doing so without knowledge of safe passage would risk leading the pack into even greater danger. Instead, they would send scouts in pairs to explore potential escape routes, while the main pack maintained careful vigilance over the human activities. To Luna's surprise, Silverfrost indicated that she should accompany Oak on one of these scouting missions. It was an unexpected honor and responsibility, one that acknowledged both her growing capabilities and her unique value to the pack. Her smaller size and previous exposure to humans gave her insights that even the most experienced wolves might lack. Before dawn the following morning, Luna and Oak departed. Their assigned route took them northwest, following a steep ravine that might offer a hidden passage through the mountain ridge. They traveled swiftly but cautiously, using every available cover and frequently pausing to verify that no human scent contaminated their path. The ravine proved promising initially. Its steep walls and dense vegetation provided excellent concealment, and the rocky terrain would make it difficult for humans to follow, particularly with horses. Luna and Oak made good progress for several hours, climbing steadily toward what appeared to be a pass between two towering peaks. As they neared the highest point of the ravine, Luna detected a worrying change. The wind, shifting direction as it often did in these mountains, carried a faint but unmistakable scent. Humans had been here too. Not in large numbers, but recently enough that their traces lingered. Oak recognized the significance immediately. They proceeded with heightened caution, moving from shadow to shadow, freezing into immobility at the slightest unusual sound. When they finally reached the crest of the pass, the reason for the human scent became clear. On the opposite side, in the adjacent valley, a small mining operation had been established. The ravine they had followed was occasionally used by the miners as a shortcut to the main expedition camp. This discovery was simultaneously disappointing and valuable. The route would not serve as a safe escape passage for the pack, but knowledge of this additional human activity was crucial intelligence to bring back to Storm. The return journey required even greater stealth, as they now knew they were traveling a path occasionally used by humans. Luna's domesticated heritage proved unexpectedly useful. She recognized subtle signs of human passage that Oak might have missed, from the particular way a branch had been broken to the distinctive compression pattern of a boot print partially obscured by loose soil. By mid-afternoon, they had made it safely back to the pack's territory, approaching from a direction that avoided any known human presence. The news they brought was received with grave attention by Storm and Silverfrost. When combined with reports from the other scouting pairs, a troubling picture emerged. 3 of the 4 potential escape routes from the basin showed evidence of human activity. Only the eastern path, through particularly rugged and difficult terrain, remained untouched by human presence. That night, Luna noticed Silverfrost watching her with unusual intensity. After the pack had settled for the night, the alpha female beckoned Luna to follow her to a small alcove within the den where they could communicate more privately. There, through subtle gestures and expressions that Luna had learned to read as clearly as spoken language, Silverfrost conveyed her growing concern not just for the pack, but specifically for Luna. The message became clear. If conflict with humans became inevitable, Luna faced unique risks. Unlike the wolves, who would be seen simply as dangerous predators, Luna's obvious German Shepherd heritage might be recognized. She could be captured rather than killed, returned to a human existence that was now entirely foreign to her nature and bonds. Luna understood with perfect clarity. The months with the pack had transformed her fundamentally. Despite her origins, she was now wolf in all the ways that mattered, in heart, in mind, in loyalty. The prospect of being separated from her adopted family and forced back into a domestic life was more terrifying than any physical threat. In that moment of understanding, Luna made a silent pledge to Silverfrost and to herself. No matter what dangers lay ahead, she would remain with the pack. If necessary, she would risk her life to defend them, just as they had saved hers during that desperate winter. Dawn brought new complications. The pack member on Dawn Watch, Flint, another of Silverfrost's nearly grown offspring, returned to the den with alarming news. The human expedition had split into smaller groups that were now systematically exploring the basin. One such group was heading directly toward the pack's den, less than an hour away at their current pace. Storm's decision was immediate and unequivocal. They would abandon the den temporarily, moving to a secondary shelter they had identified near the lake. It offered less protection, but excellent visibility and multiple escape routes if needed. The pack moved out quickly and silently, leaving minimal trace of their presence. Luna found herself in a protective formation around Silverfrost, who appeared to be moving with less than her usual fluid grace. Only then did Luna notice what others in the pack had likely observed days earlier. Silverfrost's slightly thickened midsection, and the protective way the other wolves behaved around her. The alpha female was pregnant. This revelation cast the pack's situation in an even more urgent light. They weren't merely protecting territory now, they were safeguarding the future generation of the pack. Spring was advancing toward summer, and within weeks, Silverfrost would need a secure, undisturbed location to birth and nurse her pups. From their temporary shelter near the lake, the pack observed as the human group discovered and investigated their abandoned den. Even at this distance, Luna could see their excitement at finding clear evidence of wolf occupation. The humans spent hours examining the site, collecting samples, and placing small devices that Luna didn't recognize but instinctively distrusted. The discovery of their den by humans marked a turning point for the pack. That night, gathered in their temporary shelter by the lake, Storm led what Luna recognized as the most serious council yet. The pack's body language communicated varying degrees of anxiety, determination, and in the case of the younger wolves, barely contained aggression. For Luna, the proceedings carried special significance. For the first time, Storm deliberately included her in the inner circle of decision-makers, positioning her between Oak and Willow, a clear statement about her elevated status. She had risen beyond mere acceptance to become trusted advisor, her unique perspective valued precisely because of her dual nature. Through the complex silent language she had mastered over months with the pack, Luna absorbed the gravity of their situation. The humans were not merely passing through, they were systematically documenting the wolf presence in the basin. The strange devices they had left behind at the den, which Luna now understood were cameras, suggested a specific interest in the pack itself. More concerning was Silverfrost's condition. The alpha female would need to den within 2 weeks, 3 at most. The temporary lakeside shelter was inadequate for whelping and raising vulnerable pups, especially with humans actively exploring the area. The pack faced an impossible dilemma: remain in increasingly dangerous territory with a pregnant alpha, or attempt a difficult journey through human-monitored passages with an expectant mother who would become progressively less mobile. It was here that Luna made her first significant contribution to pack strategy. Drawing on memories of her early life with humans, she conveyed through carefully chosen movements and expressions that the humans' patterns were predictable. They returned to their base camp each evening. They followed established paths. They feared the dark in ways wolves never would. Storm watched Luna's communication with intense focus, occasionally glancing toward the human encampment visible as distant pinpoints of light in the valley below. When Luna finished, the alpha male rose and approached her directly, an unprecedented acknowledgement. He briefly pressed his forehead against hers, a gesture of respect and acceptance of her insight. The strategy that emerged combined the wisdom of wolf experience with Luna's unique knowledge. Rather than fleeing immediately or remaining static, the pack would execute a tactical repositioning within their territory. They would establish a new den in the most inaccessible part of the eastern ridge, an area the humans had shown little interest in due to its steep, rocky terrain that offered minimal scientific value but provided excellent defensive advantages for the wolves. More radically, they would actively manage human movements through strategic appearances and territorial displays, not enough to provoke hunting or trapping attempts, but sufficient to discourage exploration in certain areas, particularly as they established Silverfrost's new denning site. Dawn found the pack already implementing their plan. Storm led most of the adult wolves to create visible tracks and markings in the western section of the basin, deliberately drawing human attention away from their actual destination in the east. Meanwhile, Luna accompanied Silverfrost, Oak, and Willow on a carefully concealed journey to identify the optimal location for the new den. The site they selected exceeded their expectations. A narrow fissure in the eastern ridge opened into a surprisingly spacious cavern with multiple chambers and 2 separate exits. The main entrance was easily defensible, while the secondary exit, little more than a tight squeeze through tumbled boulders, offered an emergency escape route that even the most determined human would struggle to navigate. Over the next 3 days, the pack worked with coordinated precision to prepare the new den while simultaneously executing their human diversion strategy. Luna's role became increasingly central as she helped interpret human reactions to their territorial displays. When the humans began setting up observation blinds near the lake, Luna recognized that the pack's initial diversions had been too obvious. She suggested more subtle tactics, occasional distant howls at night, glimpses of wolves moving between distant tree lines, tracks left in strategic locations. By the 5th day, their efforts were showing results. The human activities had concentrated in the western basin, with regular observation posts near the lake and the meadow where they had first seen the visiting wolf pack. The eastern ridge, with its steep approaches and seemingly minimal wildlife activity, had been largely ignored after an initial survey. Silverfrost moved into the new den on the 7th day after abandoning their original shelter. The timing was critical. Her pregnancy had advanced to the point where her mobility was noticeably reduced and her need for a secure whelping site had become urgent. Oak and one of the younger adult wolves, Sage, remained with her as protection, while the rest of the pack continued their careful management of human attention. Luna found herself in an increasingly specialized role, using her smaller size and previous human exposure to conduct close reconnaissance of the scientific expedition. She became adept at approaching their observation blinds undetected, gathering crucial information about their equipment, methods, and apparent objectives. What she discovered was both reassuring and concerning. The humans were wildlife biologists studying the alpine ecosystem, with particular interest in predator-prey relationships. They had not come to hunt or trap wolves, but to observe them. This explained their cameras and tracking attempts rather than weapons or snares. However, their scientific interest might ultimately prove as disruptive as hunting. If they discovered Silverfrost's denning site and the imminent arrival of pups, the location would become the focus of intense observation. The constant human presence, even if not immediately threatening, would create untenable stress for the pack during the vulnerable whelping and rearing period. On the 12th night after establishing the new den, as Luna returned from her reconnaissance circuit, she found the pack in a state of controlled excitement. Silverfrost had begun the early stages of labor. Storm had positioned sentries at strategic points surrounding the den, with strict instructions to alert him to any approach, human, predator, or even other wolves. Luna was permitted to enter the birthing chamber, an honor typically reserved for the alpha male and perhaps one trusted female helper. Inside, Silverfrost lay on a bed of soft grasses and fur that the pack had collected over previous days. Her breathing was measured but intense, her eyes showing both pain and focused determination. Over the next 6 hours, Luna remained by her adopted mother's side, offering what comfort she could through her presence and occasional gentle physical contact. Storm entered periodically to check on Silverfrost's progress before returning to coordinate the pack's security efforts outside. Near dawn, the miracle began in earnest. With powerful contractions and remarkable stoicism, Silverfrost delivered 5 pups in succession, 3 females and 2 males. Each tiny, blind newborn was welcomed into the world with gentle licking from their mother, stimulating their breathing and cleaning their delicate fur. Luna watched in awe as new life entered the pack, feeling a complex surge of emotions that transcended the boundaries between her domesticated origins and wild present. These vulnerable pups represented the pack's future, a new generation that would carry forward the legacy of acceptance and adaptation that had saved Luna's own life. As the exhausted Silverfrost curled protectively around her newborns, she made a soft sound that Luna had come to recognize as a call specifically for her. When Luna moved closer, Silverfrost gently guided her to lie alongside the nursing pups, creating a warm, protective circle around the new arrivals. The message was unmistakable. Luna was being acknowledged not merely as pack member but as family, trusted with the pack's most precious treasure. In that moment, any remaining distinction between her dog heritage and wolf identity seemed to dissolve. She was simply part of this remarkable family, bound by bonds stronger than biology. Outside the den, a new challenge was developing. The human researchers, frustrated by the wolves' apparent disappearance from their western observation areas, had begun expanding their search perimeter. A small team of 3 researchers was methodically documenting signs of wildlife along the base of the eastern ridge, still some distance from the den but moving in a concerning direction. Storm, receiving this intelligence from the sentry posts, faced a difficult decision. Direct confrontation with humans risked escalating the situation from scientific observation to perceived threat, potentially triggering defensive measures against the pack. Yet allowing the researchers to approach closer to the den was unacceptable, particularly with newborn pups now present. The solution to their dilemma emerged from an unexpected source. As Storm gathered the available pack members to consider their options, Luna approached with a deliberate posture that requested attention. The alpha male, who had come to value her unique perspective, paused to acknowledge her. Through the sophisticated, silent communication they had developed, Luna proposed a bold strategy, one that leveraged her dual nature in ways they had not previously considered. Rather than attempting to drive the humans away through intimidation or remaining hidden and hoping for their departure, she suggested a third approach: controlled revelation. Luna's plan was daring but elegant in its psychology. She would allow herself to be briefly seen by the researchers, making sure they recognized her as a German Shepherd rather than a wolf. Her presence would create confusion and divert their scientific focus. Were they observing a feral dog running with wolves, a lost pet, an unusual hybrid? Any of these possibilities would be compelling enough to redirect their attention away from searching for the pack's den. Storm's initial reaction was protective reluctance. The risk to Luna was significant. If captured, she might never return to the pack. But as Oak and Willow added their support to her proposal, the alpha male reconsidered. Luna had proven herself repeatedly. Her judgment deserved trust. With Storm's approval granted through a subtle head movement, Luna prepared for her mission. The timing and execution would be critical. She would need to be seen clearly enough for her German Shepherd characteristics to be obvious, but not so clearly that the humans could document identifying details that might connect her to domestic origins. Shortly after midday, Luna made her way down from the ridge, circling wide to approach the researchers from the direction opposite the den. 3 humans moved slowly through the alpine meadow, collecting samples and occasionally photographing tracks or scat. They carried no weapons beyond small knives, confirming Luna's assessment of them as scientists rather than hunters. Positioning herself downwind at the meadow's edge, Luna waited for the perfect moment. When one researcher wandered slightly apart from his companions, she deliberately stepped into a small clearing approximately 50 yards from him. The human's reaction was immediate, a startled intake of breath followed by excited calls to his colleagues. Luna held her position for precisely 3 seconds, long enough to be clearly identified as a German Shepherd, but not so long that they could photograph her effectively. Then she turned and trotted unhurriedly into the forest, deliberately leaving clear tracks in the soft earth. The researchers reacted exactly as Luna had predicted. Their excited voices carried through the clear mountain air as they followed her tracks, their scientific routine abandoned in favor of this unexpected discovery. Within minutes, they were radioing their base camp about the presence of what they believed might be a feral dog or wolf-dog hybrid in the study area. Luna circled back through concealed routes to rejoin Storm and the others, who had been observing from hidden positions. The alpha male greeted her return with a brief touch of his muzzle to her forehead, high praise from the usually reserved leader. Her strategy had worked perfectly, creating a new focus for the research team that would likely protect the den's secrecy during the critical early weeks of the pups' lives. Over the next several days, the human activity in the basin shifted dramatically. Additional researchers arrived, setting up new observation blinds and camera traps in the areas where Luna had allowed herself to be seen. Their scientific fascination was evident in their methodical efforts to document the dog's movements and potential interaction with wolves. Luna occasionally provided them glimpses, always brief, always from a safe distance, and always leading away from the den site. The pack adapted to this new dynamic, using Luna's diversionary appearances to mask their own necessary movements for hunting and territorial maintenance. Inside the den, life centered around Silverfrost's 5 pups, who grew with remarkable speed. By their second week, their eyes had opened, revealing the same amber color that characterized their mother and most of the pack. They began to crawl around the birthing chamber, their movements becoming more coordinated with each passing day. Luna spent considerable time with the pups when not engaged in her diversionary activities with the researchers. Silverfrost seemed to welcome her presence, often using Luna's visits as an opportunity to stretch her legs briefly outside the den while knowing her offspring remained protected. The pups responded to Luna with the same acceptance they showed to any pack member, seemingly untroubled by her slightly different appearance. To them, she was simply family, a constant caring presence in their rapidly expanding world. As the pups entered their 3rd week, a new challenge emerged. The alpine summer was advancing, bringing increasingly warm days that made the den uncomfortably hot during peak afternoon hours. Silverfrost began taking the pups outside for brief periods, initially just to the small sheltered alcove outside the main entrance, but eventually to a shaded area several yards away that offered better air circulation. These limited excursions represented a period of increased vulnerability. While necessary for the pups' comfort and development, time outside the den's protection created exposure to potential threats, from golden eagles that might see the small pups as prey to the ever-present risk of human discovery. The pack adapted by establishing a rotating guard schedule that ensured at least 3 adults were always present during these outings. Luna frequently took the midday shift when the sun was highest and the pups most active in their outdoor explorations. During one such afternoon session, as Luna watched the pups tumbling playfully in a patch of alpine flowers, her acute hearing detected an unusual sound, the mechanical whir of a camera lens focusing, coming from the ridgeline approximately 200 yards above their position. With impressive calm that belied her internal alarm, Luna moved casually to position herself between the unseen observer and the pups. Using the subtle vocal signal that the pack had developed for situations requiring quiet alert, she notified Willow and Flint, who were sharing guard duty with her. The 3 adults maintained their outward composure while efficiently herding the pups back toward the den entrance. Silverfrost, responding to their signal, quickly emerged to assist, guiding her offspring into the safety of the inner chamber. Once the pups were secure, Storm organized an immediate response team. The human observer, a lone researcher who had apparently followed one of Luna's deliberate trails and stumbled upon the denning area by accident, found himself suddenly surrounded by 4 adult wolves materializing silently from the landscape. They made no aggressive moves but formed an unmistakable barrier between him and the den. The researcher, to his credit, responded with appropriate caution. He slowly backed away, making no sudden movements, his camera held carefully at his side. The wolves maintained their position, neither advancing nor retreating, until he had moved well beyond the ridge. This incident forced the pack to reconsider their strategy. While Luna's diversionary tactics had been largely successful, the researchers' persistent presence and expanding search patterns had finally led to a close encounter with the denning site. If one had found them, others might follow. That night, Storm and Silverfrost made a difficult decision. Though the pups were still young, barely 3 weeks old, the pack would need to relocate. Remaining in place risked ongoing human intrusion during this critical developmental period. The eastern escape route, previously scouted but never used, would become their path to a new territory. Preparations began immediately. Hunting parties were dispatched to ensure Silverfrost and the pups would be well fed before the journey. Scouts refreshed their knowledge of the route, confirming it remained free of human activity. The healthiest adults practiced carrying techniques for the pups, who were still too young to travel far on their own. Luna's role in this transition became unexpectedly central. Her final diversionary mission would be the most challenging yet, creating a compelling distraction that would occupy the researchers' attention long enough for the pack to slip away unnoticed. The plan she developed with Storm was precisely timed. Luna would appear near the main research camp at dawn, allowing herself to be seen clearly enough that the entire team would mobilize to document and potentially track her. She would lead them on a carefully planned route through the Western Basin, opposite from the pack's eastern escape path, providing occasional glimpses to maintain their interest without allowing herself to be cornered. The risk was considerable. If Luna miscalculated or encountered unexpected obstacles, she might be unable to rejoin the pack before they departed. Storm made it clear through his solemn communication that they would wait until sunset at the first rendezvous point along the escape route. But if Luna hadn't arrived by then, they would be forced to continue without her. With vulnerable pups to protect, they couldn't risk an extended delay. Dawn broke clear and cool over the mountain basin, the rising sun painting the landscape in hues of gold and amber. Luna stood alone on a rocky outcrop overlooking the researchers' main camp, steeling herself for the mission ahead. Below, humans moved around their collection of tents and equipment, preparing for another day of scientific observation. Behind her, hidden in the shadows of the forest, the pack had already begun their careful withdrawal. Silverfrost and 3 adult wolves each carried a pup gently in their mouths, while Storm and Flint transported the 5th between them, taking turns to share the burden. The remaining pack members formed a protective perimeter, constantly alert for potential threats. Luna took one last look over her shoulder, committing to memory the sight of her family disappearing into the eastern forest. A profound understanding passed between her and Storm before he vanished among the trees. This was not goodbye, but see you soon. With that silent promise exchanged, Luna turned back toward the human camp and began her performance. Her approach was perfectly calculated, not too cautious to suggest wild wariness, not too direct to suggest domestication. She trotted into view approximately 100 yards from the camp's perimeter, paused as if surveying the scene, then deliberately pawed at the ground as though marking territory. The reaction was immediate. A researcher emerging from the mess tent spotted her, frantically gesturing to his colleagues while reaching for his camera. Within moments, the camp erupted into controlled chaos as the team mobilized to document this unprecedented close approach of their mysterious canine subject. Luna allowed them to photograph her briefly, making sure they captured her distinctive German Shepherd features. Then, as they began to move cautiously in her direction, she turned and loped away, not in panicked flight, but with deliberate, measured speed that invited pursuit without allowing closure of distance. For the next 2 hours, Luna led the increasingly excited research team on a carefully choreographed journey through the Western Basin. She would disappear into the forest, circle back, and reappear at strategic locations that required the humans to continually redirect their attention and resources. When they attempted to split into smaller groups to cover more ground, she adjusted her tactics, ensuring the most experienced trackers remained focused on the western sector. By mid-morning, the researchers had called in additional personnel from their secondary camp, exactly as Luna had hoped. Radio communications she overheard while lurking near one group confirmed that nearly all their field staff were now engaged in this pursuit, documenting what they believed might be a breakthrough in understanding wolf-dog interaction in the wild. The physical demands on Luna were substantial. She maintained a punishing pace, covering more ground in a few hours than she would normally traverse in a full day. Yet she measured her energy carefully, knowing that the most challenging part of her journey still lay ahead, the race to rejoin the pack before sunset. As noon approached, Luna implemented the final phase of her diversionary mission. Leading the most persistent group of researchers to the far western boundary of the basin, she left a clear trail heading toward the adjacent valley, suggesting she was moving toward new territory. Then, using a technique Silverfrost had taught her for confusing prey, she doubled back through a rocky streambed that would carry no scent or tracks, emerging nearly a mile away in a direction the researchers had already searched. Free from immediate pursuit, Luna began her true journey, a punishing cross-country race against time to reach the eastern escape route and the rendezvous point where the pack would be waiting. The distance was formidable, nearly 15 miles through challenging terrain, much of it uphill. To succeed, she would need to maintain a pace that few domesticated dogs could achieve, drawing on the wilderness conditioning that months with the wolf pack had built. The afternoon became a blur of exertion and determination. Luna paused only briefly at small streams to drink and cool her overheated body before pressing on. She chose her route carefully, balancing the need for speed against safety and concealment. A chance encounter with humans now would render all her efforts meaningless. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, casting long shadows across the basin, Luna reached the beginning of the eastern escape route, a narrow ravine that wound its way through the mountain ridge. The pack's scent was strong here, confirming they had passed safely hours earlier. But the tracks told a concerning story. The pups had struggled with the journey, necessitating frequent stops. The pack was moving slower than anticipated. This realization brought both hope and worry. The slower pace meant she might catch them before the rendezvous point, but it also indicated the pups were finding the journey more taxing than expected, potentially placing the entire pack at risk if they remained exposed for too long. Luna pushed herself harder, ignoring the burning in her muscles and the rawness of her paw pads now cracked and beginning to bleed from the punishing pace over rough terrain. The ravine narrowed as it ascended, forcing her to navigate treacherous scree slopes and occasional vertical passages that required careful climbing. 2 hours before sunset, as Luna paused briefly at a small spring to drink, her ears caught a faint sound carried on the mountain breeze, the distinctive high-pitched whine of wolf pups. Her heart leaped. The pack was closer than she had dared hope. Renewed energy surged through her exhausted body as she scrambled up a near-vertical rock face, following the sound. At the top, the ravine opened into a small protected basin ringed by stunted pines. There, gathered in the shelter of an overhanging rock, was the pack. Silverfrost spotted her first, rising immediately with ears forward in recognition. The alpha female made a soft, welcoming sound that alerted the others. Storm, who had been standing guard on a nearby rock, bounded down to meet Luna, touching his nose to hers in a rare display of overt affection and relief. Luna's reunion with the pack brought a palpable release of tension. Though they communicated without human words, the message was clear in every tail wag, every gentle touch, every soft whine of greeting. Family had been restored, the circle made whole again. The pups, too young to understand the significance of Luna's mission, responded to her return with pure joy, tumbling over each other to reach her. Though exhausted beyond measure, Luna found herself rolling onto her side to allow the excited pups to climb over her, nip playfully at her ears, and press their small, warm bodies against hers. As twilight deepened toward night, Storm gathered the pack to continue their journey. They had covered less than half the distance to their intended new territory, and traveling with young pups required significantly more time than their scouting expeditions had suggested. Nevertheless, the success of Luna's diversion had bought them precious security. Based on the snippets of radio communication she had overheard, the researchers would be focused on the Western Basin for at least another full day. Luna found herself in a position of honor as they resumed their trek, walking directly alongside Silver Frost, near the center of the formation. Though protocol would normally place her further back in the hierarchy, her extraordinary service that day had earned her temporary elevation. More meaningful than this formal acknowledgement was the way Silver Frost occasionally pressed her body against Luna's as they walked, a gesture of affection and gratitude that transcended pack politics. The night journey was necessarily slow and careful. Each pup was again carried by an adult wolf, with regular rotations to share the burden. They traveled primarily by moonlight, avoiding the use of established trails where human scent lingered. When the smallest female pup began whimpering with hunger and fatigue, the entire pack stopped without hesitation, gathering in a protected hollow, while Silver Frost nursed her offspring. During this break, Luna found herself being gently but insistently examined by Oak, the older wolf who had become something of a healer within the pack. He inspected her bloodied paws with careful attention, cleaning each one with his tongue. The relief was immediate and profound. Wolf saliva contained natural antibacterial properties that would help prevent infection in her raw, cracked pads. As they prepared to resume their journey, Storm approached Luna once more. In the moonlight, his scarred face and intense eyes carried a gravity she had rarely seen, even in their most serious moments. Through the subtle body language they had perfected, he communicated something that moved Luna deeply, not just gratitude for her service, but recognition. She had demonstrated a level of sacrifice and loyalty that embodied the highest values of the pack. The pack's journey continued through the night and into the following day, their progress slow but steady as they navigated the challenging terrain with 5 young pups. Luna, despite her exhaustion, maintained her position beside Silver Frost, drawing strength from the knowledge that each step carried them further from human interference and closer to a new beginning. By midday, they reached a natural overlook that provided their first view of the valley that would become their new territory. Unlike the high basin they had left behind, this landscape featured a mosaic of environments: dense pine forests, meadows rich with summer growth, and a winding river that flashed silver in the sunlight. Most importantly, it showed no signs of human presence. Storm led them down into the valley along a game trail worn by generations of deer and elk. The descent was challenging for the adults carrying pups, requiring careful navigation of steep sections. When they finally reached level ground near the river, the entire pack paused to rest and reorient themselves. Luna observed Storm and Oak as they conducted a methodical assessment of their surroundings, noting everything from wind patterns to the abundance of prey sign. Their behavior reminded her of how far she had come from the helpless, abandoned puppy of 6 months ago. She now thought like a wolf, analyzed like a wolf, prioritized the pack's needs like a wolf. Yet her unique perspective as both dog and wolf continued to serve them in ways pure wolves could not achieve. After the brief rest, Storm directed the pack toward a promising area where the forest met the meadow approximately half a mile from the river. There, partially concealed by a fallen ancient pine, they discovered a natural depression beneath the massive root system. Further investigation revealed a space that, with some modification, could serve as a temporary den while they established their territory and found a more permanent solution. The next several days fell into a pattern dictated by immediate needs. Hunting parties went out in rotation, bringing back everything from small rodents to a young deer that provided critical nourishment for Silver Frost, whose body was under constant demand, producing milk for 5 growing pups. Others worked to improve the temporary den, digging to expand the space and adding layers of soft grasses for bedding. Luna found herself assigned primarily to pup-watching duty, a role that suited her weakened condition as she recovered from her punishing diversionary mission. Her cracked paw pads were healing, but the process was slow, and both Storm and Silverfrost seemed determined that she rest as much as possible. The pups, now nearly 4 weeks old, had become bundles of endless energy and curiosity. They explored their new surroundings with reckless enthusiasm, requiring constant supervision to keep them from wandering too far or investigating potentially dangerous aspects of their environment. Luna found unexpected joy in this role, her natural patience and gentleness making her an ideal caretaker for the adventurous youngsters. By the 10th day in their new territory, Luna's strength had largely returned, and the pack had settled into a functional routine. Storm had identified several promising locations for a permanent den, and scouting parties regularly returned with reports of abundant game and no sign of human incursion. The crisis that had forced their relocation seemed to be resolving into a fortunate new beginning. It was during this period of transition and tentative optimism that Luna faced her greatest test yet. While supervising the pups during their morning play session near the temporary den, Luna detected an unfamiliar sound carried on the breeze, the distant but distinctive rumble of vehicle engines. Her body tensed immediately, ears swiveling to pinpoint the source. The sound was coming from the northern edge of the valley, still miles away but unquestionably human in origin. Most of the adult wolves were away hunting or scouting, with only Willow remaining behind to share pup-watching duties. Luna made the split-second decision to investigate, while Willow gathered the pups into the safety of the den. Using the swift ground-covering lope she had perfected during her months with the pack, Luna headed toward the disturbing sound. After covering nearly 2 miles, she crested a small rise that gave her a clear view of the northern valley entrance. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. 3 off-road vehicles carrying what appeared to be the same research team from the basin. They had somehow tracked the pack's movement and were now penetrating this new sanctuary. Luna's mind raced through possible responses. The pack was finally settling after their difficult relocation. Silverfrost and the pups needed stability to thrive. Yet here was the human threat again, persistent and seemingly inescapable. In that moment of crisis, Luna reached a profound realization. The cycle would continue unless something fundamental changed. As this understanding crystallized, Luna knew what she must do. It would be the greatest sacrifice she could make for her adopted family, but also the most meaningful gift she could offer. When Storm and the hunting party returned later that afternoon, Luna communicated her discovery with urgent clarity. The pack's response was predictable, immediate preparation for another defensive withdrawal. But Luna, summoning all her courage, presented an alternative strategy. Through the sophisticated silent language they had developed, she conveyed her unprecedented proposal. Instead of the entire pack fleeing yet again, Luna would allow herself to be discovered by the researchers, not as a brief, tantalizing glimpse this time, but as a seemingly feral dog they could potentially approach and even capture. She would draw them away from the valley, becoming the focus of their scientific interest and leaving the pack to raise their young in peace. The reaction was immediate and unified, absolute rejection of her self-sacrifice. Storm, Silverfrost, and even the typically reserved Oak made their opposition clear through vocalizations and body language that required no interpretation. They would not abandon one of their own, particularly not Luna, who had repeatedly proven her loyalty and value. As night fell and the pack gathered in the expanded space beneath the fallen pine, the discussion continued in the wolves' silent way. Luna pressed her case with respectful persistence. She reminded them of her unique position, neither fully wolf nor fully dog, but something bridging both worlds. She could navigate human interaction in ways they could not. Most importantly, Her sacrifice would ensure the safety of Silverfrost's pups, the pack's future. The debate continued into the night, but gradually, a reluctant understanding began to emerge. By dawn, even Storm had recognized the wisdom in Luna's proposal, though his acceptance came with strict conditions. The plan would be precisely staged and controlled, with multiple contingencies should things go wrong. Luna would not simply walk into the researchers' camp. She would execute a carefully choreographed approach that maximized the scientific interest in her specifically while minimizing the risk that the researchers would continue seeking the pack. The following 3 days were devoted to preparation. Luna worked with Storm and Silverfrost to develop a detailed strategy. She would appear to the researchers not as a wolf-associated dog, but as an injured stray in need of help, triggering the human instinct to rescue rather than pursue. The location would be carefully selected to be far from the pack's actual territory, creating a false impression about her range and habits. On the 4th morning, as mist still clung to the valley floor, Luna made her final preparations. The entire pack gathered for what all understood might be a permanent farewell. Each member approached her in turn, according to rank, to touch noses or press briefly against her in the wolves' version of an embrace. When Silverfrost's turn came, the alpha female broke protocol entirely, wrapping herself around Luna in a prolonged, intimate contact that communicated everything words could not: gratitude, respect, and a depth of love that transcended species boundaries. The 5 pups, sensing the emotional significance but not understanding it, tumbled around them both, nipping playfully at Luna's tail and ears one last time. Storm was the last to approach. The scarred alpha male, who had evolved from skeptical tolerance to genuine respect for the German Shepherd who had joined their pack, touched his forehead to hers in the gesture of equals. Then, lifting his head to the brightening sky, he released a howl that the entire pack joined, a haunting, beautiful tribute that echoed across the valley. Luna added her voice to their chorus, her distinctive bark howl blending with their pure wolf song to create a harmony that symbolized her unique journey. In that moment, she understood with perfect clarity that regardless of what happened next, she would forever be part of this family. The pack had not merely saved her life during that desperate winter. They had given her an identity and purpose that transcended the abandonment that had once defined her. As the howl faded into the morning air, Luna turned and began her journey toward the human encampment, her head and tail held high. Behind her, the pack melted silently into the forest, moving deeper into their new territory. Before they disappeared completely, Luna paused on a ridge to look back one last time. Storm and Silverfrost stood side by side at the forest edge, their amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that carried across the distance. In their gaze was not sadness, but pride, recognition of the ultimate expression of pack loyalty. Luna was not leaving them. She was protecting them in the most profound way possible. With that final image etched in her heart, Luna continued toward her destiny, carrying with her the wild wisdom of the wolves and the extraordinary gift they had given her, knowing, beyond any doubt, exactly who she was and where she belonged.